Welcome to Forward Ever, Leading in Challenging Times, presented by Worth Wealth Management, a weekly conversation with area leaders about how to persevere during uncertain times. Now here's your host, Gary Shorman.
Welcome again to Forward Ever. I'm Gary Shorman, and you know what? You find all sorts of people who have done amazing things and done things during the pandemic to help us all. And one of those I ran into the other day, happened to be at a Fort Hays State game. His name is Hayes Kelman. Hayes is the managing member and probably does everything, whether it's a CEO, management, and cleans up afterwards kind of guy. Hayes, welcome to our program.
Yeah, thank you. Glad to be here, and it's great to meet you.
You know what I see in the background, you obviously run a distillery. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But when we had a chance to talk the other night, you were talking about how the pandemic really changed so many of the things that you do at your company. But one of the things I know that you worked on is you worked on some of the hand sanitizer and supplied that all over. Tell me about what happened during the pandemic.
Yeah, so it kind of, I think it was a whirlwind for us. Those first few weeks of it, we sitting there watching what was happening and watching the news and trying to decide what to do. I remember we decided, hey, let's shut down our tasting room. Let's be proactive on that. I'm sure it'll be a week or two, right? And then we'll open back up and we'll be good to go. Just like everybody thought, what is this little thing? It's probably, we'll get ahead of it and then we'll get right back to normal life.
That sums it up for a lot of people. It's like, okay, we'll get through this in a couple of weeks. We'll be back to normal. How little did we know what an effect that would be? So you took that thought, and what'd you do next?
Yeah, so it wasn't, I think the day after we decided to shut down the tasting room, I came back and said, hey guys, I've got a pretty great core of employees here that I listen to them quite often, argue back and forth with what we should do on the business, and take their opinion pretty seriously. So I came back and I said, hey, I think we need to make hand sanitizer. We argued back and forth about whether we should with the FDA and the regulations on it and whether, how it was all going. And I said, I slept on it one night and I came back the next day and I said, okay, I've made my decision. We're going to do this, one way or another, because there's no hand sanitizer. People need it. So we said, I think we went out. I have to look at my numbers. I think we said we'll make 1,000 or 2,000 bottles of this stuff. And we ordered everything, got everything coming, 1,000 bottles. That was really no big deal. We didn't think we could make it out of our, on-hand spirits, really basically the base to our vodka. Ordered everything. And then within about, I think it was like 7 a.m. the next morning, I get a call from the president of Victory Electric here in Dodge City, Shane Laws. He said, hey, what do you need to make more? He said, this is a great deal you guys are doing. How can we get involved? And let's make some more hand sanitizer. And so within a matter of 12 hours, we went from doing 1,000 bottles to, he said, let's just write you a check and let's get it going. So we sat down and figured out what's our break even. We didn't need to make profit. We just want to keep people employed, keep them working, and make as much hand sanitizer as we could. And so we kind of took it that route. We said, we'll make, if you need bottles of hand sanitizer, we'll give it to you. If you can pay for, if you can give a donation back, we'll make more, and so we just it was a donation-based program that we kind of threw together, almost a nonprofit business within our for-profit business in a matter of, hours, learned as we went. So
it was a pay it forward thing. Did that work, paying it forward? Because how many hand sanitizer, how many, I'll say gallons, I don't know how you monetize that in form of size, but how much did you make and did you actually start being able to break even at it?
Yeah, so it was well over 100,000 bottles, the little 3-ounce bottles. And then actually we got into doing some bulk, and we were sending totes of it around. We were sending 2.5-gallon jugs of it out. We really kind of were finding whatever we could find for containers, and different companies would call up, hey, I've got bottles. Can I donate bottles to this? Or I have transportation. People were it was amazing, the community jumping out. The community, and I mean by community, I mean really a 5-state area, because it was Kansas and Colorado and Texas, Oklahoma. I think got some, New Mexico. That people were jumping out of the woodwork saying, how can we help and how can we be a part of this? And those that could pay, those entities, especially like the electric co-ops all around, they were a huge part of it. Then we had some nonprofits, or entities that didn't really have the funds or would rather not spend the money, that's okay. They got the goods as well. So it worked pretty well. The humans are good overall, right?
Exactly. Well, one of the things I was thinking about when you were talking about this hand sanitizer, is this a secret sauce? Is there a special recipe? And what kind of hoops because I know there were some requirements. There was some not so good hand sanitizer out there.
Yeah.
What did you have to, work through to make it work?
So it was the federal government, the World Health Organization actually has a recipe that they suggest really for third world countries when they're in a time of crisis on how to make a hand sanitizer. And so that was kind of the adopted recipe that we were using. Being the federal government, we went back and forth between, they couldn't make up their mind of what we could do, what we couldn't do, whether we were, technically making hand sanitizer you have to be registered on the FDA over the counter drug producer. And so that's, we got to the end of 2020, I remember, and I think it was like New Year's Eve, and the federal government was coming out, they were going to impose I can't remember, it was like tens of thousands of dollars of a fee on us for having this license. And all of us little craft distillers said, well, we did this out of the kindness of our hearts. We didn't make money on the situation. We don't have enough money to turn around and pay you I can't remember, even $10,000 fine. That didn't make any sense. Luckily, we got that overturned, but it was interesting seeing how some of the hoops we had to jump through to make it happen. And we still could get hit actually now with, they could still go back and say, well, you didn't jump through this hoop quite properly, so let's give you a fine.
So hand sanitizer, you think you were doing it for the right reasons. You would think common sense would prevail for doing that. Do you still make hand sanitizer?
We don't. We do not make hand sanitizer anymore. We happily moved right back over to whiskey production as soon as we could. It was pretty amazing how quickly the other companies caught up. Purell and those caught up and started making a ton of it too.
I know it was helpful because you saw that and that came out, and all of a sudden, we had what we needed, and it was so helpful. So really appreciate the way you guys kind of turned it around. I assume you kept everybody employed, and that helped keep your staff going through the pandemic, because distilling, as I understand it, is not something you can just turn off and turn on.
Yeah. No, we were able to keep everybody employed, and we actually hired those that weren't employed from other jobs, and kept pretty much anybody that wanted a job. We kept them going at our place, and we worked twice as hard during the pandemic as we did typically, because it was, we had orders going out. We had our phones were ringing every day. I mean, it was a nightmare. I'm surprised I kept all my employees with me after that, because it was a pretty stressful time.
I just love Kansans, and you talk about people doing the right thing. We talk about that on this program, leadership during challenging times. Sometimes it takes, you just have to think, and what's the right thing to do? And Hayes, you and your team did a nice job there of providing 100,000 bottles plus of hand sanitizers, and you don't know how many people that help keep well, and that's a great story to tell. But you turned it back over and started running your business and distillery with some great products. I want to take a break, Hayes, and come back. We'll talk about what you're doing today and how people can find out more about your products.
Very good. Thanks.
Our guest is Hayes Kelman, and he is with the Boot Hill Distillery. He's a managing member there. We'll be back with more after this.
The most successful investors are those that can keep their emotions in check and take a longer-term view at what portfolios will be worth 3 to 5 years down the road. I'd say that's the most important in determining what investor outcomes are. Market corrections will continue in the future. We've seen many of them over the years, only to see equity prices rise higher, and that'll be the case in the future.
Worth Wealth Management, enhancing lives and strengthening families.
Hayes Kelman is our guest today, managing member of the Boot Hill Distillery. And Hayes, we talked about how you changed focus during the pandemic to start making hand sanitizers, which helped so many people around the state, really around the 5-state area around here. But now all of a sudden, pandemic kind of goes to the end. How did you get started back in your business of distilling? How did that transition take place?
I don't know. I think it was just one day we said, let's we can start making whiskey. And,
I like the way you guys do it.
We've made enough hand sanitizer. One day I got tired of running, and I just stopped and started making whiskey.
Yeah, and hand sanitizer isn't much fun to put over ice and enjoy.
No.
I mean, it's just really it's not one of those things that you can enjoy in the same way you do distilling. What kind of products do you guys make at Boot Hill?
So we make almost pretty much anything you can make from grain. We make vodka, gin, a handful of different whiskeys and bourbon. We also, one of the big things we got into kind of in the middle of the hand sanitizer piece was we were doing to-go cocktails. And so we could make cocktails out of our tasting room, even though it was closed, and we could then sell those to people to go out and drink at home. And so we took that idea. That was another thing we did during the pandemic, is we took this to-go cocktail plan, learned how to package cans of cocktails. And then towards the end of the pandemic, or maybe soon after, we bought a canning line. And so what we've actually started making since the pandemic is canned cocktails. So we actually have a vodka, similar cocktail to what we'd have, our vodka basil lemonade in the tasting room. Now we put that in cans, and we can thousands of those at a time and sell those throughout the state. So that was kind of a fun, another more, fun or beneficial part of the pandemic that came out for us was the canned cocktails.
I had a meeting this morning, and some people use the pandemic to really do great things. They learned new things, they had new ideas, and you guys were one of those. When you go out right now, how do people find your product? Is local stores, or do they go online? What do they do?
Yeah, so the easiest way in Kansas especially is any liquor store in Kansas. If they don't have our product, they can have it within about a day. Our distributor is Standard Beverage, and they deliver to every liquor store in the state of Kansas. Besides that, come by. We have a tasting room in Dodge City. We're open from 3 to 11 Wednesday through Saturday. And other than that, visit us online at boothilldistillery.com, and we'd be happy to answer any questions we can.
Well, tell me about your team. How did they get into this? How did you get into this?
I just, I got into it. I'm a farmer. So that's a big thing that we do. So I farm and sublet, grow every grain that we use at the distillery. And so we're a soil to sip distillery. And I was looking for a way to move from selling our grains 100% on the commodity market where your price is set for you. I like being able to set my own price in the distillery. As far as how I got people involved in it, I kind of con them into thinking it's a fun job.
Bottling is fun, isn't it?
Exactly. Yes. It's not that
Bottling
bad.
is a lot of fun.
It's great for the first 5,000 bottles.
How many?
I said it's great for the first couple thousand bottles. I think it's pretty monotonous after the first couple thousand bottles.
It kind of does get to be a process, doesn't it? Well, how does your product compare to others? Across the country, I'm impressed with the fact you're bringing Kansas grain, you're doing Kansas product, you're doing that. But how do you compare?
How do we compare? Being a craft distillery, I like to think that we do put a lot more care into our products. We put a lot more care into not only making the product, but actually making the grain, farming the grain all the way through until it. I like to say, like I said, that soil to sip. We have had control over our products from the moment we put the grain or the seed in the soil until the moment you take that first sip out of that bottle. And it really hasn't left my control since that time. It's hard to battle against the big guys, the big Kentucky bourbon that they've been doing it for hundreds of years, but that doesn't mean just because you've been doing it one way for 100 years doesn't mean that there's not another way to do it, and maybe a better way. Depends on who you are.
You're doing some individual things as well. One of those being through the universities and several universities. How did that process start?
Yeah, so that was just working with a couple local universities in Kansas here that we thought it'd be a great way to fundraise money for the university as well as another product for us, and conversations, a lot of long conversations to convince universities to bring a whiskey brand on. But I think it's been beneficial for everybody involved.
Well, I'm really, as a Kansan, proud of companies like yours that have jumped in to do things. So, Hayes, thanks for joining us here, telling your story. And is there a particular product somebody is interested in? What do they look for when they go into their local store?
So really, they just ask for any Boot Hill products. They should be able to. Somebody hopefully can point them that direction and give them all a try. Let us know what you think.
That
So,
sounds great. Hayes, thanks for being with us today. Thanks for being a forward ever thinker during the pandemic and working to do that. Appreciate what you guys do.
very good. Thank you, Gary.
Hayes Kelman has been our guest from the Boot Hill Distillery. He's their managing member there. You can go online. You can find him online at boothilldistillery.com. Thanks for listening to Forward Ever, brought to you by Worth Wealth Management, where you can live with confidence. I'm Gary Shorman.
Thanks for joining us for Forward Ever, Leading in Challenging Times, presented by Worth Wealth Management. Join us right here next week for another episode with host Gary Shorman. Until then, remember to move forward ever, backward never.